theyeshiva.net.
Pesachim Daf Gimel at Beis. The line starts Kislev, right? Around 10 lines from the top. Kislev, Anohu Trei Talmidi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 lines from the top, Daf Gimel at Beis. The line starts Kislev. Continuing the sugya of how important it is for a person to speak B'lashon Nekiyah, in a refined language, as the Gemarah explained at length in the previous Amid till here. And this all came in to explain why the Tana chose to open up Masechta Pesachim with the word oir, light, rather than the word leil. So the Gemarah now tells a story. Hano Trei Talmidi. There were two Talmidim, two students, the Havayosvi Kamei Rav, who was sitting in front of Rav and learning Torah from the mouth of Rav. Who was Rav? Rav, his actual name was Abba, Reb Abba, but they called him Rav, the teacher, the Rav, the Rebbe. Rav was the first generation of Amoraim and the last generation of Tanoim. He was from the transmitters, the people who represented the transition point from the Tanoim, the last generation of Tanoim, to the first generation of Amoraim, to the point that the Gemarah says, Rav Tano Polig, he can even argue with the Tanoim. Rav was born in Bavel, in Babylonia, and then he went to Eretz Yisrael to learn Torah from Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Then he went back to Bavel. He became the Rosh Yeshiva of Surah, which was one of the biggest yeshivas in Bavel. It lasted for 8 centuries, 800 years. And Rav was the Rosh Yeshiva of Surah. Rav was considered one of the greatest sages of his generation, of his day. He lived in the 200s after the Common Era. And two students are sitting in front of Rav. Now listen to this. Chad Omar, one of the students says, after the shir, after the lecture, after the learning, Shavisinan haishmata kedover acher mesamkan. I'm going to translate. Forgive me, I'm going to translate. This shir made me feel like a tired pig. Dover acher means another thing, which is the euphemism for a chazer, a pig, a swine. So he says, "Hai shmata, this shir shivisinan, it made us feel kedover acher, like a chazer, like a dover acher, mesamkan, which is exhausted. Afamata techazer, an oizgemutsche techazer. That's what I feel like after the shir." The Chadama, the other student, says, "Shevisinan haishmata kigdi mesankan." The shir made me feel like a tired old goat. Right? Some people call themselves a tired davar acher, a tired pig. Another one, he's a tired goat. Kigdi mesankan, like a tired goat. V'lo yishtoi Rav b'hadei deich. And Rav did not speak to the first one. I guess until he, I don't think it means he never spoke to him again. Marik brings a girsa for 30 days, or for whatever time, I guess till he apologized, until he repented, because he expressed himself this way, that the shir made me feel like I felt like, he was talking about himself. I felt like a dover acher. Rav didn't want to speak to him. Zokt Rashi, Kigdi mesankan, Kigdi oyef. You see, it's interesting. Rashi could have said it also on the Kedover Acher Mesamkan, but Rashi says it on the Gdi. Kigdi Oyef, like an exhausted goat. Sinuk, Loshen Ayefus. Sinuk means exhaustion, weariness, being tired. V'doimaloi, an example for this is, we have in Maseches Shabbos, an expression, somebody who says, God Gdi V'sinuk loy b'Gemarah the Shabbos b'perek b'mei isha yotzet Daf Samach Zayin. It's an expression in Maseches Shabbos. Daf Samach Zayin. A person says, God gedi v'sinuk loy. What does that mean? Zakrashi? His gaber mazali v'altehi oyef. My mazel, my constellation in heaven should be strong, and it should not become exhausted. God, Gibel Dalet, represents your mazel in heaven, like your constellation that you're connected to. Your star, your zodiac, the different signs in heaven that are well known in the world of astrology. So the person says, God Gedi, may my constellation show me good fortune. V'sinuk loy, it should not become weary, it should not become tired. So we see here that sinuk is a lashon ayefus. So when he says kigdim esankan, he means like an exhausted goat. The Torah Chaim asks an interesting question. It says, why did the Gemarah have to say what the second student said? That's not relevant to the story.
Sorry, anyone that's parked on the sidewalk is getting a ticket.
I'm getting you ready. So.
They'll add it to the budget.
Let me see if I didn't get you.
Ich hatte gegeben Chazara nach dem. Ich hatte gegeben Chazara. Private Chazara. Chaim asks a question which you should all ask. Why is it relevant what the second student said? Let's say there was no second student. Let's say the second student didn't say anything. Let's say one student said, this shia made me feel like a davar acher who's tired. Same story. It was a lashon meguna, it was coarse language, it wasn't a lashon maki. Rav got upset. L'maynaf gemina, that there was somebody else who compared himself to a tired goat. That doesn't seem to be negate to the story. Whether there was somebody else, there wasn't somebody else. The ikar is that one person said, Kedavar Achim Asanka. He starts off, Hano Trei Talmidi. L'maynaf gemina, the contrast. So the Torah Chaim answers, without the second one, you might think that Rav got upset about something else. Rav got upset because he said that the Shia made him exhausted. Well, says the Shia made you exhausted. She had to give you life. That's why he got upset. But the other guy also said that the Shia made him exhausted. All he said was he's like a goat. He's not like a pig. But no, the other said also. So that's a right that Rav wasn't upset the fact that he criticized the Shia. And he said to the Shia, I don't know what hit me. I'm just overwhelmed and exhausted. That doesn't bother Rav. You're saying what you feel. You're saying you're being honest about what you felt about the Shia. You went home not alert and awake. You went home exhausted and tired and drained, and you're not sure what went into your brain, what didn't go into your brain. That didn't bother Rav. What bothered Rav was that he compared himself, even though he wasn't talking about Rav, and he wasn't talking about the Shir, because the other person was also talking about the Shir. But he spoke about himself, and he called himself a Dover Acher Mesankan. That's what bothered Rav. In other words, the Lashon Meguna is about himself, actually. That the Shia made him feel like a Dover Acher who's exhausted, and that's what bothered Rav. It wasn't personal about Rav. Geshmak Hadiyuk. I just want to point out that Rabbeinu Hananel, on the right side, you should have Rabbeinu Hananel, right? And I saw that he brings another two interpretations of what Dover Acher Mesankan is or what Gdim Mesankan is. If you take a look at Rabbeinu Hananel, you see it's the small words on the right side. You see Kigdim Mesankan, it's probably like 10-15 lines from the top of Rabbeinu Hananel. The line starts Kigdim Mesankan, it's very small words. Just see what he says. He has a different interpretation. He says, Pirush, the pshat is Kigdi Shamein. I feel like a fat goat. Mesankan is not a tired goat, like a fat goat. Molei b'cholei varov, full in all of his limbs. Koloimar, it was like, this was like a shmak shir. I feel like the opposite. Not that I'm tired. It was like a satiating shir. I feel fattened. You know, like after a heavy meal. You're like, wow, I'm full. I'm satiated. Koloimar nismalu, meloi meyayim shalanu, mizu ha'alocha, savanu mimena. This halacha, this shir, filled us up, it satiated us. Kedetnan betamid, hey varim v'habdorim shalonis aklu, me'erev, soin kenoisan, b'tzidei hamizbeach. Another interpretation is very different. Gdish and ispashet b'mayim, a goat that spreads itself out. I guess it wants a shower, and it wants to bathe itself. It spreads itself out in the water. Umischabit lotzes misham, and maybe there's some quicksand or some mud, and it's having a hard time getting out of it. It got stuck. Me'ena yachel. So this is what he said. Kigdim mesankan. I feel like a stuck goat. Meaning the shir completely confused me. It was so complicated and complex. I feel like I'm stuck. I don't know how to get out of it. It's a plunter, what they call in Yiddish a plunternish. I'm confused. I just don't know how to get out of it. So three completely different interpretations. Rashi Tainas Mesankan is exhausted. One said he's like an exhausted Davarach. The other one said he's like a tired goat. The other commentary in Rabbeinu Hananel is, I feel like a satiated Davaracher, or like a satiated full goat that's satisfied. A fat goat, a Gdi Shaman. We got such a good meal. And the third one interpretation is, I feel like a stuck goat, or encumbered, obstructed by all of the pulpulim and difficult discussion, or a davar acher. Rabbi Chananel finishes that that's what he meant. Rav didn't speak to him because he spoke disgracefully about himself. Davar acher is the euphemism for chazer, which is interesting. The man didn't say chazer. In other words, he was using a lashon nekiya. He didn't want to use the word chazer. He used the word davar acher, which is a euphemism for chazer. But the fact that he called himself the concept of a chazer, Rav was upset. Rav didn't speak to him.
Maybe the Gemarah didn't say chazer.
That could be. You're saying he said chazer, because the Gemarah didn't want to say chazer. But then it would defeat the purpose, because that would bring out the story much more. Just like we said by a halacha, you have to say tameh, because it has to be clear. And that's why you should speak b'lashon ktsara. So by the Gemarah not using the word chazer doesn't really say the story. That's why I think, I'm not sure, but I think that the Mashmal says he might have said taka davar acher. But the very fact that he was comparing himself to davar acher, even if it was b'lashon nekiyah, but the connotation is a very negative. Why are you calling yourself a pig? Call yourself a goat, mela. That's already stretching it. So you hear that when a teacher hears a student saying something negative about himself, it should upset the teacher. It should bother the teacher. The teacher should feel that there's something wrong here, there's something off here. That's Rabbeinu Chananel. So we have a 3 pirushim what mesamkan means.
Does anybody go into the different natures of these animals? What you can learn from it, if anything?
You want to know why he chose davar acher and why he chose a goat.
Yeah.
Well, no, English people say like an old goat. I feel like an old, tired goat. I mean, you have this expression, and people also say, I feel like an old pig, right? They say it about somebody else usually. I don't know why they chose these animals. An interesting question. I saw this morning, I looked up the Chaim Chidushei Chaim Pesachim, and he has a little bit of a different interpretation to this Gemarah. Ubehektim, every story in Gemarah is brought for a reason and a purpose. What's the point of this story, Al Pi Pshat? To bring out the importance of Lashon Nakiyah. Rav was very upset that a student spoke in this way and said, Kedavar Acher, I feel like a Davar Acher, Mesankan, however you interpret Mesankan. The question that Chaim Sofer says is, why did they even speak like this? Hakufa, they were 2 Talmidim sitting by Rav, that means they were Makabel from Rav. Why did he speak like this? Why did he say these words? He didn't know this. He couldn't find another expression after the shir. Instead of saying, I feel like a pig, I should say, I feel like a davar acher. He could have said, I feel like something else. I mean, we all know after shiurim people have comments, right? Whatever the comments are, we all know, especially if the shir is long. Apparently the shir was very long. That's why they got tired. And the shir was very complicated. As Rabbi Chananel says, they got stuck, they got stuck. People have comments. We know people have comments, yeah? Including this shir, people have comments. And the comments are different types of comments. Kol chad from shir delay. Why did he have to say, wasn't him get egbet? He couldn't find some other animal. There's one animal in the zoo, a davar acher. He didn't know about any other animals. I mean, there's tired sheep, and there's tired horses, and there's tired goats. He dafka to say a davar acher. A gedi at least is a kosher animal. It's a kosher animal, and it's a more edela. It's a different type of animal than a davar acher. So the Sofer Tain is that really the 2 Talmidim meant to say something profound. Or behektim another shaila. Why did they bechlal comment this way? What's the point? Okay, so you'll say after the shir, people are stretching, they have comments, yeah? Why is it so important that the Gemara records it and brings it in to bring out the union of Lashon Nakiyah? But the shaila is on the Talmidim. If it were 2 Talmidim of Rav and they said something, it had a psat toichem. It wasn't stop. People have comments on the shir. Just feedback. There was something deeper here. So the Chaim Sofer says that he thinks that the 2 Talmidim actually were saying the same thing. And they were saying something profound. They weren't just trying to say, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, let's go get some food, let's go get a drink, let's go to sleep. Whatever. That wasn't just the point, which is a regular human thing, but that's not the story. They were actually saying something profound. You see from Rabbeinu Chananel and from Rashi, it was a complicated shir. If it was a smooth, easy shir, they wouldn't be exhausted. It was an overwhelming shir. Why? Because it was a shir filled with questions and answers. It wasn't smooth. It was a roller coaster. He suggested something, he refuted it. He suggested something else, he refuted it, which we call pilpul. Kashas, Raminu, Stidis, which was B'chlal the derech of Bavel. The Gemara says about Bavel, in Masechta Sanhedrin Chav Daled, it says in Eicha, Yirmiyah says, B'machshakim hoishivani kimeisei olam. Hashem has placed me in darkness, like those who are dead. So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, B'machshakim hoishivani zet Talmud shel Bavel. This is Talmud Bavli versus Talmud Yerushalmi. Talmud Yerushalmi is more a matzav of oir. It's smoother, it's easier, you get straight to the point. Talmud Bavli is full of hava minas, ideas that are refuted, and then other ideas, any sugi. You see here what the Gemara did with the word oir. Right, one and again, 14 or 15 proofs, as we discussed, what the word oir is. But it's every sugi in Talmud Bavli. So this was the type of shir that Rav gave, and it was full of such svaris. As the Chaim Sofer says, it had psoilus and it had oichel in it. Like in a salad or a food, you have the psoilus, the dirt that has to be thrown away, and you had the good part that you have to take out. And the whole shir had so much psoilus that they had to remove and constantly get further and remove more debris and more debris and more dirt and more rocks and more earth until you get to the point. This made them tired. This is what the shir was. Zogt the Chaim Sofer, on this, the Talmud said, I want you to know that this shir, I feel like a davar achem asank. What was he saying? So the Chaim Sofer says, the Medrash says, Asid chazel l'tar. That la'asid when Mashiach comes, the chazer is going to become a kosher animal. And that's why it's called chazer. Chazer, it says in Medrash, is from the word chazara, lachzar. It's going to return. Like chayzer b'tshuva, he returns, come back. Lachzar is to come back, right? Chazara means you review. The chazer is still going to come back. He's going to come back, he's going to, I don't want to say a second coming, but the chazer is going to come back and as a kosher animal. However you explain what that means, if the chazer's characteristics are going to change, you have to understand what that means. But there's another Chaim Sofer where he asks that if a chazer is going to be Torah when Mashiach comes, so then if a piece of chazer falls in to treifa meat, to kosher meat, it should never be bottled because it's a davar sheyesh le matirin. The halach is that something is going to be mutter, there's no bittul. So the Chaim Sofer asks in Parsha Shmini, I once saw, against a pilpul, that it's a davar sheyesh le matirin, so it should not be bottled. Ad kedei kach. Good, he gives an answer. But this is the svara. So what is he trying to say? He's trying to say like this. Even the chaz is a piece of treif. It's not so pashut. It's going to be kosher one day. The whole shir, there were so many ideas that were irrelevant. No. Every nekuda of Torah is emes. It may not be practical right now, but if it's a svara that Rav said, there's an emes to it. There's a truth to it. It's going to be applicable in another time, in another place, in another sugya. Like the Gemara says in Eruvin, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. Two opposite opinions. B'Shami and B'Silo. Both are the words of the living God. How could both be the words of the living God? God is contradicting himself every moment. Beis Shammai says the first night of Chanukah you have to light 8 candles. Beis Hillel says you're not supposed to light 8 candles. You have to light 1 candle. The last night of Chanukah, Beis Hillel says light 8 candles. Beis Shammai says light 1 candle. So both are the words of the living God. What do you mean both? What's this Elokim Chaim? You say like this, then a second later you say the opposite. The pshat is there's an emes in this. There's an emes in this. Emes is not black and white. There's a truth to this. Maybe lahalacha right now we're doing like Beis Hillel. But the fact that we're doing it lahalacha doesn't say that the other thing is worthless, it's valueless, it's meaningless. No, it's fully truth. And if you just learn the shit of Beis Shammai, you have to make a brichas HaTorah. You have to say on it, Asher b'chabonim mikol amim v'nasalanu es terasa, asher nasalanu teras emes. In other words, there's an emes in it, some Sefer says. I want to quote to you his words. He says as follows. What seems now against logic, it's going to be truth, but Makkah Macher in another place, Begilgul Acher, maybe in a different reincarnation, this is going to be your truth. Every person speaks according to his das. Maybe in this Gilgul, this Svara is not relevant to me. I can't understand it. In another Gilgul, it may be relevant to me. So he said, that's why I feel like a Davar Achem Esank. Right now, it looks like there's nothing kosher about it. But no, don't reject it. Because this very davar acher, in another time when Mashiach comes, it's going to be a kosher animal. Every svara that Rav said in this shir is kosher v'yashar. It's Torah, it's emes. Elamai. Now it looks like psoilus, he rejected it. But rejecting a svara in halacha doesn't mean the svara is worthless. Doesn't mean the shitta is absurd. It means there's an emes to it that may not translate into halacha l'maisa. The other student said,
So why did that?
Gewaltige Wort, a minute. Well, I'm not finished. Some Sefer says, came the other student, and he said exactly the same thing. But the way he said it was different. Rashi says,
He came instead of Lashonikia, he said.
Yeah. What's Gedi? We just learned from Rashi, right? Rashi said, God Gedi the Sinokloi, my mazel, my constellation in heaven, should be strong and it shouldn't be exhausted. So he says, God is the constellation. He says, everybody, we know astronomy, how it works is within 24 hours, they keep on moving. That which is below your feet at the moment, because it's below the earth, in a few hours, it's going to be on top. Every 24 hours, it's a galgal hachayzer. What's lamata now, in a few hours, is going to be lamaila. So a svara that right now is under you, it's going to be on top of you. In other words, nothing is always on the bottom. Now it's on the bottom. Soon it's going to be on top. It's going to be on the right. It's going to be on the left. Everything has its space. Everything has its time. That's why he used the word gedi. Sagt er Sam Sofer. Because Lapoyel now, a chazer is a dava maguna, a chazer is a dava tummy. That's why it was called Losh Hashem and Neki, even though the Teichen had a Teichen. But he could have said it like the other student who said that I feel like a Gedi who's exhausted. In other words, that now it's exhausting because it seems like psoilus, but really in another time, in another context, it's going to have an inyan of emes.
Isn't the Navaraka praised in some place because of that meter of it being determined?
I never saw. Could be. I don't remember.
It goes in the garbage pile over and over again, looking for the little minuscule piece.
Could be. Then it's consistent with this.
But I'm saying that's it's not a praiseworthy animal presently, but I think there was such a Gemarah. I think I don't know if I'm going to Rabbi YY, but that very midah. Well, so my question.
Oh, I'll tell you. Okay, I know what you mean.
My very question.
The Degel Machane Ephraim, you mean? The Baal Shem Tov had a grandson, the Degel Machane Ephraim. So he writes, I think in Parsha Shmini, I saw. Very nice word. I think it's in Shmini. The Pasuk says over there that in order for an animal to be kosher, it has to have split hooves and chew its cut. And the Pasuk brings, the Parsha Shmini brings 4 animals that have only one sign, and therefore they're not kosher. From those 4 animals, there's only one that has split hooves, but doesn't chew its cut. That's a chazer. The chazer, kimafris parsuhu. If you see a chazer, a swine, has split hooves, but it doesn't regurgitate its food, it doesn't chew its cut. So that's not a kosher animal. And the Chazal compare Esav to a chazer. Rashi says that the chazer poishet lofov. The chazer spreads out, whenever you see a chazer, it spreads out its hooves to say, look, I'm kosher. And we have in Yiddish an expression, kosher v'ya kosher v'chazer fissel. Kosher v'ya chazer fissel. Basically, the chazer spreads out his hooves and says, look, I'm kosher. What's happening inside, of course, is something else. And that was Esav. My father got married at the age of 40. I'm also getting married at the age of 40. Even though till 40, you were doing other things than your father. But the main thing is at the age of 40, I get married like my father. It's the month to be like your father. So Degel Machane Ephraim says the fact that a chazer is going to be kosher l'asad lavai means that there's something kosher about it. Why? So he says a beautiful word. He says sometimes a Jew does a mitzvah, a Jew does a good thing, and he feels like a hypocrite. He feels like a chazer. He feels like b'chitzonius, it looks good to himself. I'm doing the right thing, but inside I'm treif. So he said l'asad lavai, it's going to be nizgala that this is really kosher. In other words, even though right now you feel that your pnimius, your inside is not there, it's just an external thing, but really your inside is there. You just maybe not be aware of who you really are. So that's why this very act that seems completely external, in the future when everything will be revealed, we'll see the kashrus of it. Which of course is mamtik, it sweetens this idea of the Chaim Sofer.
Why was the Beis of Kislev doubting himself?
You mean of Chanina ben Chadyan? It's not a stida. He wasn't doubting the value of what he was doing. He was doubting the purity completely. He wasn't doubting the value of it. Zog the Gemarah weiter. Hano trei talmidim have yasser kamei de Hillel. There were 2 students who were sitting in front of Hillel. They were talmidim of Hillel. V'chad minayu, one of them was Rabbi ben Zakkai. This is, of course, Hillel HaZaken, who lived quite before Rav, more than 200 years before Rav. Hillel lived in the last century, before the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, and as the Gemara says in Masechus Sukkah, he had 80 students. The oldest student was Yonis ben Uziel, and the youngest student was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the student of Hillel. He himself lived to 120, and he was the Nasi, the head of the Sanhedrin, during the Churban Bayesheni. He's the one who negotiated with Aspasionis, with Vespasian, not to destroy Yavna, which was the center of learning and the center of the Sanhedrin, ten li Yavna v'chachamah. So he's a student of Hillel. So two students are sitting in front of Hillel, and one of them is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. But Va'amri, the story has a second version. When the Gemara writes the story, they say there's another version. Kamei de Rebbe. The two students are not sitting in front of Hillel, they're sitting in front of Rabbi Yehuda Anossi, which means it's a completely different generation. Because Rabbi lived a century after Churban Bayesheni. Hillel lived a century before Churban Bayesheni. So who would that be? The Chad Minayu Rabbi Yochanan. And one of them is Rabbi Yochanan, and you can understand how the confusion happened. The story was said about Rabbi Yochanan. Some said it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, which means his Rebbe was Hillel. And some said it was Rabbi Yochanan. The Amoyre, Rabbi Yochanan, just like Rav, was from the first generation of Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael. Again, the generation that transmitted the Messiah from Tanoim to Amoraim, Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Their Rebbe was Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Just like Rav had a Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Yochanan was a colleague of Rav, also had a Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. And Rabbi Yochanan lived in Eretz Yisrael, Rav lived in Bavel. Rabbi Yochanan, by the way, is the editor of Talmud Yerushalmi. Talmud Yerushalmi was edited by this Rabbi Yochanan more than 100 years before Talmud Bavli. So Rabbi Yochanan is sitting in front of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. So again, two versions of the story. The Chad Minayu Rabbi Yochanan. And the two students are saying as follows. Chad Amar, one of the two students, which is probably Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in the first version, or Rabbi Yochanan in the second version, says, why, when you harvest grapes, do you make sure to do it with pure vessels, with pure utensils? But when you harvest olives, zaysim, you don't have to do it with pure vessels. Now this needs just a little brief introduction. The halacha is that all food and drinks are susceptible to be mekabel tumah. They could all become impure. How do they become impure? By contact with a source of impurity. The classic example would be if Chalila somebody dies, and as then there were no hospitals, a person died in the house. Anything that was in the house that was susceptible to tumah became tameh, whether it was food or drinks. The difference is other things that become tameh you can put in the mikveh or cleanse them in the whatever the process is, paradum or mikveh, and they become tahir. Whether it's clothes, whether it's spoons, bowls, cups, people, right? Blankets, match, whatever it is that's mekabel tumah, you could usually be it matayr in the mikveh. The exception is oichlin and mashkin. You throw the food into the mikveh. First of all, I don't know what it's going to taste like, and second of all, it's just tameh. Now, tameh food is not a problem. If you don't have to eat, there's a concept of called oichle chulin betara, but a regular Jew can eat tamadika food, but it's tamadika food. You have to know it's tamadika food. In order for food to become tameh, to become impure, there's one condition, and that is it has to be mukhshir lekabel tumah. It has to be susceptible to tumah. And what makes it susceptible to tumah is that it became wet from a liquid that is called a liquid in chumash. Torah calls it a liquid, it became wet. So for example, if I harvest grapes, I go to my farm, I take out grapes. Those grapes are not going to become tameh unless a liquid falls on the grape willingly. I want it full. The fact that it rained when the grape was connected, that doesn't count, because then every fruit would already be tameh. After it's harvested, it has to become wet from a liquid. What types of liquids? There are 7. There are 7 types of liquids that if they fall on any grape or any fruit or any of these food will make it tameh. There's a siman for them, a mnemonic for them. Yad shachat dam, a hand that slaughters blood. Yad shachat dam. It's yad is yayin, yud is yayin, wine. Dalit is dvash dvarim, honeys of bees, honey that comes from bees. Then you have shachat is shemen chalav tal, oil, milk or dew, and then the last is dam and mayin, blood and water. Those are the 7 mashkin of Torah, the 7 types of liquids. So again, you have yad shachat dam, so you're going to have wine or grape juice, by the way, is going to make it susceptible. So if wine falls on the grapes or grape juice falls, it's a mashke that's going to make it be mekabel tumah. And then you have honey, is called a liquid. And then you'll have oil, you'll have milk, you'll have dew, you'll have blood, and you'll have water. Water, of course, those are the 7.
What was left? What other liquids are left?
My Pyrus is not
Apple juice not, orange juice
my
not.
Pyrus not.
No, it has to be a mashkin that Torah describes. Now, if this falls on my fruit, let's say water gets wet, now the oranges or the apples or the grapes or whatever it is are susceptible to tumah. Till that, they're not susceptible. So this Talmud said, when you harvest grapes, the halach
means
is
they became
mukhsher.
That means then if there's a mess in the house,
Then if a tumah touches it, it becomes tumah.
only touches it? Or,
Depends what type of tumah.
right.
If it's a sheretz, right? Let's say a dead weasel, if it touches the food, then it's tumah. If it's a mace, then there's too much oil, then you don't need to touch it. But usually you have to touch it. If you touch it, it becomes tumah. So he said, what's the reason when you harvest grapes, you have to do it with pure kalim? But ein moiskin betana. But when you harvest olives, you don't have to do it with kalim tahirim. You don't need pure. In other words, when I harvest olives, I don't care if I use a keli, if I use a utensil that's actually tameh, it's fine. Because the olives won't get tameh. The grapes will get tameh from the keli. The keli will make a tameh, so you have to make sure that the vessel is pure. What's the reason for this difference in halacha? Just for the sake of lashon kodesh, especially when you learn Mishnayos and Gemarah, when harvesting grapes in Hebrew is called boitzer, bitzira. That's why he says boitzrin betara. That's harvesting grapes. Okay. When you harvest grain, it's called kitzira. Grapes is bitzira, grain is kitzira. And when you harvest olives, it's called mesika. Different names, but the same idea. You take a sickle or a scissor, whatever you use, and you harvest these things. So you have betzira, ktsira, and mesika. That's why he says because betzira is for grapes and moiskin is always for olives. So that was his question. Okay. Let's see Rashi. Mipnei ma boitzrin betara bekelim tahirim ve'ein moiskin betara bezeisim kori mesika ve'ein tzorich l'moiskin betara. Why? Kedama b'mesechta Shabbos b'yitzias Shabbos loichashiv moyel ayoytzemen lahachshe. I'll tell you why. When you cut olives, probably a little juice will ooze out of the olive. That's not called she'enoi shemen gomer ela ayoytzei habad. That doesn't have the status of oil. Only that which comes out in the olive press. When you bring the olives and you press them in the Beis Habad, means the olive press, that's called shemen. So when you're harvesting olives and a little juice comes out on the olive, it's not called hechsher, because it's not called shemen. So I don't care if the kalim are tamadika kalim, because what's the big deal? Even if the olives are touching an impure vessel, they're not going to become impure because no liquid fell on them yet, because you're just harvesting them. You didn't have a chance. Later, if you're going to pour water on it, then you have a problem. You have to take them out of the vessels. So Rashi, but when you cut grapes, when you harvest grapes and a little grape juice, which he calls here yayin, wine, oozes out of the grapes and flows, it trickles down on the grapes, machshiran. It's going to make it mukhsher, it's going to make it kosher, meaning susceptible. The nichalebe, he wants it. So therefore, you have to make sure that when you harvest grapes, you should be using pure vessels, because it's almost inevitable that some juice is going to come out when you harvest it. You give a little squeeze, a little kvetch, and you don't want that anavim to become mukhsher, and then it's going to become tameh from the keli, and it can happen. In other words, if the anavim become tameh, they become tameh, but you just have to know all the halachas. You have to be careful with it. It's not the end of the world that your grapes become tameh. He wants it.
He wants the juice?
He wants the juice, yeah. It's not something that he looks at valueless. He wants it. If he's not interested, it should get wet, meaning he wasn't interested in it flowing, then it's not machshe. It has to be berotz. So that's what he says.
Why would he want it? What's the point?
It's good. It's good.
It's not bad when he cuts down the grapes.
It's because he doesn't want it to go. He wants it. He
wants the juice.
Yeah, he wants the juice. So Chad Amar once said,
obviously the Alavi doesn't want it.
It doesn't have that. Doesn't have that chshivas.
Isn't that a Kiddush in Tumah that a keli is going to be Batami and Eichel? The keli normally wouldn't result in another.
Okay. For that, we have to wait till Daf Yudalid, when we're going to get into Tumah and Tara, and it'll be clear. I'll just answer your question, and that is, you're asking how can a keli be metame oichel? The answer is sometimes a keli could be an avatuma in unique situations, so the oichel will be a rishon, A. And number two, sometimes an oichel could be metame as a sheni, even if the keli is a rishon. Okay? The keli won't be metame another keli, it won't be metame a person, but the keli can be metame food, which will become a sheni, even if the keli is a rishon, and usually the keli is a rishon. Because if the keli touches a sheretz, a dead weasel, so the weasel is called avatuma, the keli becomes first level, and the food will be second level, which we'll see. This is going to be the sugya from Daf Yadalad Amar Aleph. It's going to get very lebedik, all the halachas of Tumah and Tara. Why do you harvest grapes with pure vessels and not olives with pure vessels? The other student asked the same question. Why do you harvest grapes with pure vessels, and why do you harvest olives with tumah, with contaminated impure vessels? Omar, the Rebbe, who was sitting there, heard this. They asked the same question. Apparently they raised their hand and they shouted out their question. The Rebbe, whether it was Hillel or Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, said, Muftachani bazeh. I am confident with this one, the first one who spoke in a respectful, refined language, saying, Ein moiskin betara. I'm confident he's going to become a teacher who will teach halacha, will become a guide, a mentor of halacha to the Jewish people. Not many days passed until he became a moira hira, teaching and mentoring and guiding Jewish people how to live. Whether it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai or Rabbi Yochanan, this is what he said about it. Why, in other words? Because his Rebbe recognized the value of the fact that he spoke b'lashon kavod, that he spoke b'lashon nikiyah. You'll ask a question, l'cha'ira, there's a mile in lashon ktsara. The second one spoke with brevity. He said, Mipnei ma, boitzrin betara, moiskin betuma. That's more bekitzer than saying, ein moiskin betara. So we should give him praise after the sugya of the Gemara, no?
And it's halacha.
Huh? Oh. So that's the question. Is it really halacha? He's not, the halacha is not that if it's tamei or tahar, like we learned before. The fact that something is tamei or tahar, a keli can get tamei and tahar, that's not the discussion. The discussion here is about the harvesting. Why you harvest it with a keli. The word tumah and tahar is not the halacha. In other words, we're not saying this keli is tamei, this keli is tahar. That we already established. We're discussing why you're harvesting with this type of keli. So according to the shit of the Balamar that we discussed in the previous year, you never use the word tumah because it's a lashon meguna unless it's for halacha. So that would explain why he was very impressed with this student. But according to the other shittas, that you could say the word tumah if it's a lashon ktsara, l'chayda he could have said it's a lashon ktsara. So the Marsha taketaina that both are equal. You could say lashon nekiya even if it's aruch, but you can also say lashon ktsara if it's tameh. So why is he praising the first one? L'chayda, even if the first one has a complete right to do it. Yeah, and even if there's a mila in it, but certainly we said b'lashon ktsara you could say the lashon of tumah. So the Chidush Haran answers and he says because actually the whole reason why you could use a lashon megune ktsara is that it should actually be clear, concise, and the second person was actually confusing. Why? Because when he says what does it sound like? It sounds like you have to harvest with tumah. You don't have to harvest with tumah. Nobody says it's a mitzvah to bring impure vessels. The first person was actually much more accurate. It was longer, but it was much more accurate and concise. You don't have to be moiskin betara. So it actually had the maila also of clarity, and that's why he was mishabeach him, and he said he's going to be a moira hira. I should just say that the Chidush Haran says that there's a shitta. He says from Tosfos, even though by us we don't have it in Tosfos. But he says that Tosfos says apparently he had a Tosfos that says that actually he meant the second one. He was actually praising the second one. Who decided he was praising? Rashi doesn't say anything. Rashi actually doesn't say anything here. Rashi just says the two. It says, Muftachani bazeh. Who's bazeh? So we touched on the first one. Maybe he meant the second one. Maybe he meant actually the second one who spoke b'lashon ktsara. That's what he was praising. That he's going to be a good teacher. He's going to be a moira hira. So he actually brings that. But the Ran says there's no need. There's no need to say this. Pshat, you could say very well that he meant the first one.
Both of them became moira.
Huh?
Both of them.
No, but that's the first one. That's the first.
I mean, it's more mashma the second because
Bazeh.
only one. Yeah,
Bazeh.
The one you just asked.
Bazeh, right.
So.
Bazeh. If I'm not mistaken, I have to look it up. Anybody has a big Gemarah here? A thick Gemarah?
Yeah.
Let me just look at something. I'm not mistaken that Ashash, you have like the real Gemaras, the way they used to learn. Oh, the Rashash, Reb Shmuel Strasson from Vilna, writes here in the back, he says, Haran Mevi B'Shem HaToisvus, the Ran, Chidushi Haran brings in the name of Toisvus, again, it's not by us in Toisvus, that the person who said Moiskin Betuma, he was the one who was complimented. Utmiheni, I'm astounded. Shadei B'Shabbos Daf Yud Zayin Amar Hillel Atzmoi Ve'ein Moiskin Betara. In Shabbos Daf Yud Zayin Hillel, the Rebbe himself used the words Ein Moiskin Betara. So how can the Ran even think that he was praising the student who said Moiskin Betuma when he himself used the word Ein Moiskin Betara? So obviously the pshat is that he's talking about the first one, not the second one. That's the Rashash's question. Now, according to this vart of the Tosfos the Ran brings, it's understood why he's going to be a Moira Hira. According to the Pashtusdik interpretation that we just said, that he's talking about the first one, what's the connection with being a Moira Hira? Because he spoke refined language, therefore I know he's going to be a Moira Hira. What does that have to do? What's the connection? Moira Hira l'chayra means he knows Shulchan Aruch backwards and forwards. He knows every Shach, every Taz, every Rebbe Kiveg, every Pri Megadim, every Pischei Tshuva.
He knows how to give it over.
Lashon Nakiya, Mela Lashon Tzad, I understand, he's a good teacher. But here we see a big yisoid, that somebody, to be a Meira Hira Yisrael is a person who's a refined person, an ois ge'edel to mensch. A person who's a refined person, he's going to be a Meira Hira, is not stam genius, he has a good IQ, like we spoke earlier with Rabbi Chanina Betradya. Somebody who's a refined person, it comes out in his mouth, how he speaks. It's an edel mensch, he's a pure person. A pure person, you could trust him as a Meira Hira. And you'll see, it's interesting, he says, Meira Hira Yisrael. Meira Hira. What's Meira Hira Yisrael? Obviously by Yisrael, by the Chinese. Where's he going to be? Avada be Yisrael. Muftachani Meira Hira. He's going to be, in other words, he's going to be a big Paisik. He's going to be a big on. No, he's saying something else. Meira Hira Yisrael. He's going to be able to permeate the Jewish people. He's going to be able to affect the Jewish people. Meira Hira, not Stam, he could sit in his cheder and be Mechadish Chedushim. He can affect Yisrael as the Chedush. For that, you need a Lashon Nakim. That was an edel mensch, a refined person, not just have an encyclopedic or even profound knowledge. This is the shaykhs of the first shia to the second shia. Okay, so the Chalta Torah Achas.
Like the Balatanya, this Gemara.
Zog the Gemara vayt Hanot Losakani. There were 3 koyanim. We know, again, another little introduction. Every single Shabbos, they used to take bread off the table, the lechem haponim, 12 loaves of bread, and they were distributed among the koyanim who were working that shift, that week in the Beis HaMikdash, that mishmar, and they would eat the lechem haponim. Now, there could be sometimes a lot of koyanim, so they had to split up the lechem haponim. Lechem haponim was there a whole week, from the previous Shabbos till the next Shabbos, and then when they took off the old lechem haponim, they put the new lechem haponim, which stayed there a whole week till the next Shabbos they ate. There were 3 koyanim, and they were having a conversation about how much they got. How much they got. Again, a very interesting conversation. It's almost, I remember in camp, they would have snacks in the afternoon, and everybody, what did you get? What did you get? Did you get a big piece of kakash or only a small piece? Lahavdil, they were discussing lechem haponim. Chad Amalu, one tells the other guys, Higiyani kapul. You know how much lechem haponim I got? Like a bean. You know, you have a little tiny bean, that's how much lechem haponim I got. Chad Amalu, the other said, Higiyani kazayas. I got the volume of an olive. The Chadam, the third one said, Higiyani kiznav halatah. I got lechem haponim like the tail of a lizard. Znav is the tail, halatah of a lizard. Now a lizard is not just a lizard, it's one of the Shmoina Shrotzim. In Parsha Shmini there are 8 types of insects that if they die, give off tumah. Their carcasses, their corpses are a source of tumah. It's called Tumas Shrotzim. 8. One of them is a lizard, a latah in Chumash. So he said, I got, not a lizard is a small, but I got like the tail of a lizard. Batku acharov. They were very unimpressed with this expression about the lechem haponim, which is kosher, which is sacred food. Batku acharov, they checked after him. His genealogy, umatzu by shemetz pasel. And they found a disqualification in his genealogy. Zakrashi, Higiyani kapul, milechem haponim lechelki. Shemetz Pasul, Psul Kohuna, Chalal. Rashi teaches he was actually disqualified to be a Kohen. He was what we call a Chalal. Chalal means anybody who's a child of a father who's a Kohen. But if Kohen married somebody that a Kohen is not allowed to marry, for example, he married a woman who was divorced, or a Zoyin or another Chalala, the child of that person, even though genealogically his father is a Kohen, he's not allowed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So they found in him Shemetz Pasul, a blemish in his genealogy. Frag the Gemarah Vatna, we learned a Mishnah in Masechta Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Vav, when a person ought to examine the lineage of his wife, of the Kala, before he gets married, to make sure she's not a mamzer or anything that would disqualify him from marrying this lady. If you could find that her father, Zayda, actually served in the Beis HaMikdash, he worked by the Mizbeach, you don't have to check from there upward. In other words, the Beis HaMikdash, before they admitted a Kohen to do the Avodah, the Sanhedrin used to make sure that he is kosher to do the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. So once you can establish, let's say she's a Bas Kohen, her father serves in the Beis HaMikdash, or Zayda, or El Zayda, you don't have to go up there. Further than that father, you know that it's completely wholesome and kosher. Oy bazai, this Kohen, whatever it is, if it's her father, you don't have to go up anymore. You're good.
Only the father.
Yeah, or if it's her grandfather. As long as you know in that family, Olamaila up, you don't have to go further back. You don't have to go further back.
He looks like he got investigated after he was served.
That's the question. That's excellent. That's the question of the Gemarah. If this person was eating lechem upon him, that means he was serving already. That means he was investigated already. Why are they investigating him now? Would they have a right to be baidik? Nobody asked you to do bdikas when you don't have to do bdika. Nobody asked you. He was already admitted. If he was admitted, we say ain't baidik. You're not supposed to be baidik because it's questioning the whole legitimacy of everything. Why are they checking him? So the Gemarah, you're right. Two answers. When we said this story, we said they found a blemish in his genealogy. It's really shachatz pasul. Shachatz means arrogance, haughtiness. They found in him a disqualification because he was arrogant. It's a different type of disqualification. Not yichus, just himself. Yichus hatzma, yeah. As Rashi says,
That disqualifies.
you'll see Rashi, shachatz pasul, hu atzma haya gas ruach. It's not a zayda. He himself was a gas ruach, umevaza kotche shemayim. And he's disgracing the sacred food of Hashem. The ein royal l'shamash. Such a person is not worthy to serve. The Gemarah says in Menachos, Daf Yudches, avoda hamasura lebnei Aaron, koyin she'eina moide bekulan av b'meneguna sheben ein lechelet bekuhana. Any avodah that was given over to the children of Aaron, if there's a koyin who's not moide in any of them, meaning he doesn't accept it, he doesn't see the value in it, even if it's something that gets your hands dirty, and he shouldn't have a part of it. And if he doesn't see it as a privilege, then it's not for him. That's what they found. It doesn't know with yichus. His yichus was fine. But they found in him, if he could compare the lechem upon him to the tail of a lizard, which is a source of tumah, it means there's something very off about how he sees his entire role in the Beis HaMikdash. If you see this as dealing with tails of lizards, you don't really belong here. If you cannot treat it with the dignity and the holiness and the divinity that it deserves.
Rashi before.
Or Rashi before, yeah. Ein boitkin le'inyin yuchsin lisaish shamin ha-mizbeach u'lamayla. Im shimish b'mizbeach, once he serves in the mizbeach, ein tzarich livdik l'mayla imenu. You don't have to check above. The im loy ha'yiroi l'kuhuna lo yamanichin oisi l'shamash. If he was not worthy genealogically for kuhuna, they wouldn't let him serve. Kedetam b'mesechta Middas, the Mishnah says in Middas Perikei, lishkas ha'gazis. There was a lishkas ha'gazis, a chamber in the Beis HaMikdash where the Sanhedrin sat. Sham ha'yoyosh from Bezdin would sit, and they were experts. Miyachase kuhuna leviyah. They were experts in tracing back the families of all the Kohanim and the Leviim. If they found somebody was halachically not allowed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash because there was a blemish for whatever reason, when he wanted to do the Avodah, so he would put on shchayim, he'd put on black clothes, and he would go out. So Mela, why are we baiting this person? So the Gemara answers, shachatz pasul. It wasn't shemetz pasul, but shachatz. Another answer.
If the Beis didn't analyze their yichus, why doesn't Rashi refer to Ezra Soter's Yudson? It was all codified already when at the time of Beis Sheni. Why
Because this was probably hundreds of years later.
So it's even after.
Right.
Even after
They had to be baidik, especially if a new family came from Bavel. A new family came, they didn't know. If they knew, you're right. If they knew already, then it's good. The Beis same. Another answer is they were baidik him, and they found a blemish in his genealogy. The question is, why did they even search? Shiny Hasim here was different. The Iyu the Ara Nafshe. He is the one who afflicted this negativity on himself. In other words, they realized that the first bdika may have been erroneous. They may have not done a good job. As Rashi says, the fact that he could speak like this revealed there was a mistake. They never did a good bdika. So even though you don't say you're boidik min hamizbeach, you're not boidik min hamizbeach l'mayla, but when you see evidence that there is a different story here, you don't say, but they were boidikim. Well, maybe they made a batch. Maybe they made a mistake. They're humans. They can make mistakes. So therefore, he himself forced them, so to speak, to say, check me out again. And indeed, they found that there was a reason he mistreated it, because he really didn't belong there. In other words, the fact that he called it, in many ways, it was a hashgacha. You know, there's an expression in the Haggadah, we say, Chacham Mahu Oimer. So there's an explanation. Chacham Mahu Oimer. Rasha Mahu Oimer. In other words, whoever you are comes out in your words. What we say reveals who we are. Chacham Mahu, what he is, Oimer, it comes out in your words, in one way or another. But it's never hidden and repressed fully. So when he said this, it actually brought out who he was. He didn't belong there. Taka for him, it was a lizard's tail, because he wasn't allowed to eat lechem upon him. It was taka for him. For him, it was taka not good. It was, in many ways, it was a good thing. He was expressing what he had to express. Iyudar anafsh. Zog the Gemarah, hahu aramah. There was an aramah. Aramah means it was a non-Jew, an Aramean from Arami. The Havas Solik, a fascinating story. The Havas Solik, he used to go up to Yerushalayim, to the Beis Hamikdash, every year for Pesach. V'achil Pesachim, Yerushalayim. He would eat the carbon Pesach in Yerushalayim. As we know, every Jew went up to the Beis Hamikdash before Pesach, and there was a special carbon that was brought Erev Pesach in the afternoon, after midday, either a sheep or a goat. The halach is you couldn't bring it yourself. You had to have groups, subscribers, usually family members or neighbors or friends or relatives. And you would bring the carbon together. And at night, by the Seder, they roasted the carbon Pesach. And this was the staple of the Seder. And they would eat it at night. Once it was nightfall, it was offered during the day in the Beis Hamikdash, and it was eaten at night in the whole Yerushalayim. And thousands and thousands of Jews would eat together. Everyone had to eat a kazayas, which was not a lot. You can have one sheep for a lot of people, or if you want to eat more, you can eat more. Depends how many people you had subscribing menuyim to the carbon Pesach, and you would eat it throughout the night. You can really eat it till the morning, or the Chachamim said to eat it till chatzos, so people shouldn't by mistake leave over the carbon. And this was, of course, only for Jews. The pasuk says clearly in Parshas Bay, Kol Nachri Lo Yochel Bay. A Gentile should not eat it. Even on Arul, somebody didn't have a bris is not allowed to eat it. A Meshumad is not allowed to eat it. And he would go and obviously camouflage himself as a Jew. And he would eat the carbon Pesach each year. Now, what was his gross taiva? You want lamb chops? Go to a restaurant and eat lamb chops. No, carbon Pesach. That the Gemara doesn't say. Omar, once he says, and we'll soon see to who he said this. He said it to the wrong guy. Omar, he says, Ksiv, it says in the Torah, Zois chukas ha-pesach, kol ben neicher lo yochel boy. A Gentile shouldn't eat it. Uksiv, another pasuk is, kol ori lo yochel boy. Somebody who wasn't circumcised shouldn't eat it. Va'ana, but me, ha-kachlina mishufri shufri. I eat from the best cut of the meat. Shufra means the best. Shufra means la creme de la creme, the best of the best, the superior of the best, the fanciest cut, du kennst that cut, the best cut of the lamb, I eat. Not only do I eat it, I eat mishufra de shufra. A goy, a Gentile, I get everything. Who did he tell this to? He told this to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis tells him, I have a question. Did they ever give you the fat tail? Did they ever give you the fat tail? Amalei loy? No. Amalei. No, he says no. So the Yehuda tells him, this is garnished. Kisalkas la'asim. Next time you go up, Malu, tell them, Svuli me'alia. I want the real shufra, yeah? I want the $175 piece. I don't want the $90 piece. I want the shufra emissar. Tnuli safuli me'alia. Safuli means stuff me. Give me the fat tail. Okay? Kisalik. When he goes back for the next Pesach, Amalahu, he tells his group, the Chevra, they have to split up the sheep. Me'al Yisvuli, give me the fat tail. You never gave me the fat tail. Amrulay, they said, Al Yilagavoya Salka. What are you talking about? The fat tail gets burnt on the Mizbeach. It goes up to heaven. one of the parts of the sheep that has to be offered on the altar, it's not eaten, is the aliyah, is the fat tail. The fatty part in the tail, the back of the sheep, it's like the beginning of the tail, it's a very fat shumon, very fatty part, it goes up to the mizbeach. So what do you mean, feed me from the fat tail? Amrulay, they continue to say, Man amalachahachi. Who told you to ask for this? Why are you asking for the fat tail suddenly? Amalahu, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis said to ask this. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis was known. Amru, they say, not to him, to each other, my haide, come on. What is happening here? Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis doesn't know a halacha that you don't eat a fat tail. It's a chumash. Every kid knows a pasuk chumash that the aliyah goes up on the mizbeach. What is he telling him to ask for the aliyah? Something is strange. Something is off. So if they would think Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis was a comedian, a joker, a letz, a jester. So people sometimes do it. You make a prank. You remember you have a friend, you say, go ask the principal to do this and this. Yeah, and it becomes a litzanas for a whole week, and the whole yeshiva is sasa v'simcha. Some of you are experts at this. And you ask the right question, and you don't realize even what. You don't even realize what's going on. But they knew that Yehuda ben Beis is Nishken Letz, who's trying to insult people and have fun on his cheshbon, that the whole chabura should have a laugh. So they want to know, my haide, come on. So what they do, they realized you got to check out the matzav. Batku basrei, they checked him out. Vashkechu, they found Aramohu. He's not even a Jew. He's an Aramean. V'kotlu, and they killed him. They sent a message to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis. Shlom lach Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis. Peace unto you, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis. The At ben Nitzivin. You live in a city called Nitzivin, u'mitzudascha prusa b'Yerushalayim. But your net is spread out till Yerushalayim. Even though you live so far away in Nitzivin, your influence spans the world. It reaches Yerushalayim. In other words, you realized and you influenced us and you made us aware of what was going on. Now, of course, the biggest question in this whole Gemara is why'd they kill him? Why'd they kill him? Why Kotlu? They killed him. The Gemara is silent. Which brings also a question. What was this guy interested in? It was such a big passion to be able to go and eat the Korban Pesach. I mean, you're stuck in Besser Glicken. You can't find anything better to do with your life. Eat a Korban Pesach with Jews in Yerushalayim. What is it? It's a barbecued piece of meat. It's a barbecued piece of meat. I mean, what exactly was his taiva? What was his point? Just to fool people? And even if, why kill him? Yeah. Let's see Rashi for a moment.
The Beis, it's mashma had the authority to kill an Aramean, right?
It says Bekotlu, they killed. It's very ambiguous. Who's they?
I thought that the Jews were not the highest authority at that time in that province.
This conversation wasn't with Koyanim. This conversation was with his Bnei Chabura. Who would give him the tail? Not the Koyanim. This was already at the Seder. When they would feed the tail? It was at the Seder. He was sitting with his group. Whether the Chabura or they gave him to authority. It doesn't say who. It doesn't say who.
If this is by Shane, my point is that how...
L'chayre by Shane, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis. Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda ben
How
Beis.
is it that he had the right? They had the right.
Excellent question. Excellent question. How does it even come in here to this Gemara? Why is the story here in the Gemara? It's Taka Masechta Pesachim, but we're not dealing now right now with Hakavas HaPesach.
Is it getting to this mindset where
No. The Pashtus is brought here in the Gemara because the previous Gemara says that he's compared the lechem upon him to the tail of a lizard. So they checked and they found that he was pasal kohuna or that he was arrogant. So here's another story where they checked after somebody. Some Seifer says then it wouldn't be connected to the Gemara. The Gemara is talking about Lashon Nakiya. Some Seifer says the reason is because if Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis, if the Chazal wouldn't have a reputation of speaking with respect, they would have all said Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis is making a joke. But they knew that a Jewish leader doesn't speak that way. He doesn't make pranks with people. Doesn't insult people. So if he's telling the guy, go ask for the aliyah, he's not trying to make a litzon. That's some service. He says the mamish belongs into the Gemara. That they knew if Rabbi Yehuda ben Beis said this, there has to be depth there. He wasn't trying to make a spill on somebody else's cheshbon. You want to make litzonas of yourself. You know, a guy is not an ignorant person. He doesn't know the halachas. Go ask for the tail, but he's the aliyah. I know here it wasn't a joke because not everybody knows they have to be makar of the aliyah. But if somebody knows you have to be makar of the aliyah, it would be a joke. And they assumed everybody learned chumash. They knew you have to be makar of the aliyah. But if people would know, be such an ignorant person. That's some Seifer's word. Let's see Rashi. Mika safulach, klum noiselach min al yelecha. Ain't nice long and a kocher shaboy. Nah, they don't give you no good cuts. They give you the cheap part. They don't believe in giving you anything good. V'neskaven lahatoisa. Rabbi Medrash understood that there's something here. He wanted to make him make an error. When he goes back, Yishal min al, you should ask for the tail. And Rashi adds, fascinating. Ubiyad Rabbi Medrash lahoya laherga. Rabbi Medrash would have killed him himself. He couldn't. Here you see there was something going on. Why did Rabbi Medrash want to kill him? So he lied. He was a liar. You don't kill people because they say a lie. We'd be killing a lot of people. Rashi says he felt he should kill, but he couldn't. So he realized this is a dangerous situation. He has to go send him back. Safuli me'alya, halituni min alya. Stuff me from the alya. V'keves haya. It must have been a sheep. So the tail goes up in the mizbeach. The alya goes up completely on the altar. Why is Rashi saying this? If it would have been a goat, the alya doesn't go on the mizbeach. This must have been a sheep. If it would have been a goat, he couldn't say safulach me'alya. They wouldn't say it goes l'gavaya. It had to be a sheep. He told me, he told me that you guys are discriminating against me. Just because I don't look like you, I don't come from your yeshiva, I don't have your mahalach, you're discriminating. I gave the same money like you. Everybody had to chip in for the sheep. I gave money like you. I didn't give less. Why am I being discriminated against? So they asked, and they found out, the story is here. Because of the previous story, the Gar Mushneim lived the Kachreim, because both people, who are the both people? The people who said, the Gar Mushneim, the person with the lechem upon him, and this person who ate the Korban Pesach, caused the Jews to check out who they are. And the first story is brought here, because the person compared the lechem upon him to a lizard still. That's what Pashtus Rashi learns the interpretation. Medrash Hashem will continue tomorrow and try to figure out the answer to this mystery.
Where's the tzibah? Where was that?
Why did you say
That's not clear. That's not clear. And of course, you're asking the big question: why didn't Rabbi Medrash come for Pesach? What was it given? Couldn't come for Pesach.
He booked the hotel before that.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.